After only one season in Phoenix, the Suns have fired Frank Vogel. Of course, a disappointing year overall for the Suns, who entered the season as one of the co-favorites to win the Western Conference title after the acquisition of Bradley Beal in the offseason to form a perceived big three in the Valley. They came up short each and every step along the way. Regular season swept in 4 by Minnesota to start the opening round of the playoffs as well. Donnie, were you surprised that Frank Vogel was fired, or was it the expected move in your mind out in the desert?
From the ownership group, which again is Matt Ishbia, as you're taking a look at when he took control of this team and immediately made changes and was working the phones himself to make sure he got Kevin Durant, it's not a surprise at all, because when you are this passionate as an owner right off the bat, you expect great things right off the bat, especially, Ben, when you have a talented roster like the Phoenix Suns have. Now, if you take a look at Frank Vogel throughout this process, we were just waiting for them to get to the playoffs and maybe the, talent would rise above any sort of issues that you had in the regular season as long as they were healthy. Frank Vogel would still have a job today if he probably even got to the second round. But you're not going to be able to hold your job by getting swept in round number 1 with that amount of talent. They're way over the luxury tax. You expect a return on your investment, and that's not a return on your investment getting embarrassed in round number 1. Frank Vogel is a really good coach, but in the landscape of professional coaches, you're hired to be fired. And if you have immense talent heading into the season where we're expecting from an ownership group to make a run for a championship and you fall that flat, it's no surprise that Frank Vogel's out. It's just the way the game works.
It is the way the game works in the NBA. Donnie is spot on. It's not that Bradley Beal was injured through most of the year and maybe is not the superstar that we all expected. It's not the depth outside of the big three was lackluster for a second consecutive season in Phoenix. It's not that, as Donnie and I very well knew, looking at the Suns each and every juncture of this season, continued to fall short of expectation. We continued to ask, is Phoenix ever going to rise to that level that we expected throughout this year? It's on the head coach. So a change is made. But let's look at why Frank Vogel was fired. Because again, one of the themes of this NBA campaign before the year even got underway was the idea from the odds perspective of the Big Four. The 2 teams out east, the Celtics and the Bucks, the 2 teams out west, the Nuggets and the Suns. Those 4 teams, Donnie, if you remember, and I know you do, entered this NBA season as the only 4 teams that had 3 digits in their price, less than 10-1 to win an NBA championship. In Phoenix and Denver, despite the Nuggets winning an NBA title a year ago, were the co-favorites to win the Western Conference. 51.5 was the win total. Phoenix went under that. Plus 130 to win the division. They came in second. Plus 270 again, that shortest number alongside the Nugs to win the Western Conference. Did not even win a single game in the postseason. And of course, tied with Denver for that third shortest price behind the 2 teams from the East at plus 550 to win an NBA championship. Swept in 4 games in the opening round. That's why Frank Vogel lost his job. Is it fully his fault? No. But when you do not match expectation, when the expectation is sky high, somebody's got to pay.
Yeah, exactly. You take a look at the record, 49-33, which wasn't too far off of their win total, Ben, listed at that 51.5. But as we know in the NBA, nobody's really worried about the regular season. And we keep getting back to that point saying sooner or later this team is going to work itself out because you have too much superstar top-end talent, and you actually improved your bench from a year ago. So this was a better version of the big three heading into this year, getting Bradley Beal. And you say, okay, where can this work out? And I reiterate the same point left and right. You're trying to take a look at the Suns that if they just got healthy at the right time, which means play the final couple games of the season, get to the playoffs, that front-end talent is supposed to just win basketball games on its own. Forget about the head coach itself. Quite frankly, it doesn't matter if it was Frank Vogel or anybody else this year. The results probably would be the same. Which then, as we take a look till next year who that coach is going to be, and let's just say it is Budenholzer, I don't think the changes are going to be that drastic. Oh, now we're just going to snap into it. You played an unbelievably talented basketball team in round number 1. And yes, you got swept, which is never ideal at this point. But I don't think if you had Phil Jackson back from like the late, mid-1990s coaching your team, if it would even made a difference anyway at this point. The players are there. The superstars are what put people in the seats, not the coaching staff. So we knew as an ownership group, you made all these moves here. And you also talk Matt Ishbia saying, you know what? I don't even care about who we actually draft in what position. We'll burn those picks for more players here. So the onus is not necessarily going to be on the players themselves, but on the coach, because the coach is going to be the one that's easily removed from the equation, not the actual superstar players.
12 years as an NBA head coach for Frank Vogel and a winning record, 480 and 422. What?
He's a champion, too. I mean, just within the last 5 years.
Won a championship with the Lakers in the bubble back in the 2020 season, was fired 2 years later in L.A. Darvin Ham was there for 2 years. He's now gone as well. Frank Vogel will have a job somewhere pretty soon in the NBA coaching cycles. That's just how this thing works. Don't believe me? Look at who the next guy up in Phoenix is more than likely going to be. That's Mike Budenholzer, who, of course, was fired at the end of last year by Milwaukee, who won an NBA championship just a few years ago over who? Oh, yeah, the Phoenix Suns. Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN reporting yesterday Mike Budenholzer is emerging as the frontrunner to become the Phoenix Suns' next coach. He is already assembling a coaching staff. You know what made me chuckle when I read that line? You think Adrian Griffin is back on his staff? Might be a new assistant coach in Phoenix?
Why not? I mean, it makes some sense here. If you're comfortable with that move, you get back into the NBA. It's a great landing spot at this point, but also that's a high-pressure situation. So if Budenholzer going there is going to make a lot of good money, but that owner's going to sit him down day number one. The expectations are championship or bust. Good luck on your season here, even though it didn't work out last year. And some of those guys, another year older, and quite frankly, heading into next year's playoffs, what's the anticipation as the Big Three is going to be healthy for that run here, which was this year, and it didn't work out? That's a tough – I want to ask you this question, Ben. If you were an up-and-coming NBA coach or even a veteran coach, it doesn't matter. What situation would you rather be in? The team that's looking to be on the ascent to see if you can build it, or they give you a ready-made championship team and say, get out there and go win a championship?
Yeah, I don't really know. I think it would be fun to build through that organization. By the way, our producer, Joe Frizo, correcting me. Adrian Griffin was in Toronto, not on Bud's staff in Milwaukee. Whoops. Some things you learn. Thanks, Joe. Correct your countdowns and we'll be ready to go. Anyway, so as we keep it going around the early line on this Friday, I think Donnie asked a really good question. And what we've seen here, DRS, in the NBA is that maybe some of those cores that are built together are starting to have more success than the super team type of construction of a roster. And it makes what the head coach does a little bit more difficult. Because if you win, great. You had KD, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. But if you lose, see ya, pal. Pack your bags after a year or two. And we'll see if all three of that perceived big three is back in the Valley to start next season, more than likely under Mike Budenholzer. But it just is an interesting conversation because we don't often point to a ton of head coaches around the NBA, at least in this current climate, and say this organization is this way because of that head coach. Really, Greg Popovich, maybe in San Antonio and not as of late, and Eric Spoelstra in Miami, to name a few that come front of mind in terms of those head coaches responsible for how their organization truly plays.
Yeah, and also you're trying to take a look at, like, Vogel was brought in. There wasn't just a whim like, hey, let's try this coach out. Like, he's a very successful coach with an NBA championship just a couple years ago, and it didn't work out. Budenholzer, the same thing, an NBA championship coach, but more that veteran approach. So they're not going with that new upstart guy or maybe that J.J. Redick type, let's just get you in the coaching ranks. I think it'll work out. Because the one thing that we do know, superstars are obviously set in their ways. This head coach has to get along with that big three, and if he does, they could have success. They butt heads early on, then it'll get really interesting real fast next year for the Phoenix Suns.
It's really interesting when you look at the current active head coaches and how long they have been there. Not many more than about a decade in the NBA.